Already? Good. Order. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee, and today we're holding our fifth evidence session on children's TV and video content, and we're really pleased to be joined by the following representatives of YouTube. We've got Dr. Garth, who is the Head of Health for YouTube. We've got Mairi, Brewis, who is the Head of Media Co and Responsibility Partnerships for YouTube UK. That's a big business card, isn't it, Mairi? And we've got Rawle, who is the Head of Public Policy for YouTube UK. You're all welcome. Before we start, can I remind members to declare any interests before they ask their questions? I have accepted hospitality from YouTube in the past, thank you for that. But if anyone else has anything else to declare, please make sure you say it at the point that you ask your questions. We're going to start with Natasha.
Thank you very much, Chair. I used to work for Channel 4 and my husband works there, so that's me declaring an interest. And on behalf of parents across the UK, thank you so much for your service to our children during COVID. You saved a lot of arguments in my household, so thank you very much. So I'm just going to jump right in and just ask who is responsible for the content on YouTube? Maybe I'll start with Alex.
Who is responsible for the
content on YouTube?
So YouTube is a distribution platform, so I guess it's worth taking a step back. So we are a content distribution platform. We don't produce any content ourselves. We host content. I guess we're the world's largest video library. And so we work with partners, and Mairi can talk a little bit more about the partners that we work with, and we value both high quality content and in the context of kids, age appropriate experiences.
So there's nobody responsible for the content on your platform?
So ultimately our leadership team are responsible for the content on the platform, and we have developed systems and processes in place. But I don't know if Mairi, you want to talk more about the kind of high quality content process?
Yes, of course. So my role is to partner with my team with the organisations that put the content on YouTube, and it's really up to them, the decisions around what content they choose to upload to the platform, how they brand it, the editorial choices they make within that, what geographies they make that content available in, and of course as and when they wish to take it down and if they wish to monetize. Obviously all of that operates within the framework of YouTube as a platform. We have very strict community guidelines about what kinds of things are acceptable, and we have mechanisms to make sure that those are in place, but the editorial vision, I would say, sits with the content partners.
But let me add something to that. Garth, and I lead health, as you mentioned, on YouTube. And so we're responsible for a lot of the well-being and safety aspects of YouTube. And so we take this concept of safety very seriously in terms of our own responsibility. And also this concept of age-appropriate content, and especially as young, prefrontal cortexes are developing, it's important for to have age-appropriate content. That's why we have YouTube Kids, supervised experiences and experiences for teens, all in that context, and also this issue around high-quality content that we'll get to during the course of this conversation. So you should know that behind that is us being very serious about our systems around content quality and age-appropriate content.
YouTube ultimately is responsible for the content on the platform, which is reassuring to hear. So last week, I don't know if you managed to catch our committee meeting. Last week we had Ian Bundridge from the BBC in, and the question around what is YouTube, and obviously for this conversation it's good to sort of set the context of what YouTube is, and you kind of said right off the bat that it's a distribution platform. It's the world's biggest content library, I think.
The world's biggest video library.
Yes. Okay. So is that the definition of what YouTube is?
Yes. So we're not a distribution. We're not a production company. We don't produce content. We're not really a social media company. We don't have social functionalities. We are a distribution platform, the world's biggest video library.
So what makes you different then, just for clarity, so what makes you just a distributor and not, say, a streamer?
We do not commission content. We do not commission any content at all.
Okay. So did anybody else want to?
Yeah, I can build on that a little bit, and if I draw on your experience at Channel 4, so the way that Channel 4 or the BBC would commission content is that they would have commissioners whose job it is to select the content that they want to appear on their platform. So that's their kind of editorial vision, and they may well shape the programming as well. So they will decide, the casting of the characters or the script and so forth. For YouTube, someone like Channel 4 or BBC would put the content on the platform. They would have a channel within YouTube, and they really set the direction, the tone, the editorial, the choices about programming within that channel that appears on YouTube.
Just sort of like, again, going back to that kind of example of Channel 4 who commissioned content, yes, but didn't make any content themselves and are themselves a distributor in its own kind of right. But the thing that makes that different is it's a broadcaster and it's beholden to Ofcom because it editorialises its schedule. How is your kind of editorial guidance that you have any different from, say, a commissioner saying we want to prioritise this content over that content? Have you not evolved from being a distributor and you're more kind of discerning in what you're doing?
That's a really good question. We fundamentally operate differently from traditional broadcasters. We have 500 hours of content uploaded to YouTube every minute, and we operate at a systemic level. We're also user-driven. Our focus is about connecting users to high-quality content that they want to see through a recommendation system. And I think we've seen with safety legislation that a systemic approach is the best way to kind of manage these issues and to manage them at scale. And there are real significant benefits to that. YouTube has democratized access to content online. It's been hugely powerful for the UK's creative industries and UK content creators. So, 15,000 UK content creators on YouTube employ the equivalent of 45,000 people. It's worth about 2.2 billion to the UK economy. Over 80% of YouTube UK channels are viewed outside of the UK. So what we've done is create and democratised a huge ecosystem which has some real benefits.
I completely understand that, and obviously, as I said, we use it in my household, and I get it. But I suppose what I'm getting at is your platform that started out as a library is essentially changed and shifted because there are now editorial decisions being made at a systemic level via your algorithm, whether you kind of intervene on that or not, but you're making editorial decisions. So your platform has evolved from just being a library. It's a bit more of a kind of complex landscape.
It is different, but ultimately it's about personalisation, and personalisation is what allows us to deliver recommendations to users to make sure they see helpful content that's relevant to them and also safer for them.
It's essentially a personalised TV schedule, isn't it? It's essentially, it's like if you're in the olden days when someone used to sit in a broadcaster and go, at 9 o'clock we're going to play this, and this. You're doing that algorithmically on scale.
I think that's looking at it from a kind of traditional broadcast perspective, and I just don't think we see it. I think there's a bit of kind of square peg round hole kind of scenario here because we just don't see it. It doesn't translate over from linear to the kind of distribution that we have.
How is it different if you're making decisions on behalf of your user because you're recommending content for them based on whatever is in your ingredients for your algorithm? How is that different from somebody editorializing content in another context?
I think a really interesting way of looking at it is push versus pull. So we are not pushing content to users. Users are pulling content towards them based on their previous watch history and other signals about their behaviour on the platform.
Can I also just mention that although, of course, people do find content through recommendations, there are actually multiple ways to find content on YouTube. Yeah. Some people, because they have a strong affinity with the channel, might go direct to, say, the Channel 4 channel on YouTube. It could be that people use search to find particular pieces of informational content. And I think that's sort of part of Alex's point about it's not just all TV-like content on YouTube. It's also that people go there to, in my case, showing my son how an egg hatches or how a crocodile runs or whatever else. So there are quite a few different routes in, which is why I think it's a resource.
And so I think in 2025, your CEO said YouTube is the new television in a blog he posted, Our Big Bets for 2025. And said that many people watching TV means watching YouTube, and TV is now the primary device YouTube viewing is done in the US. He also then went on to say this year that YouTube TV will become cable reimagined, so streaming your favourite channels. So basically, it's the future of telly. Do you agree with your CEO that YouTube is now TV?
I just make two clarifying points. I think there is TV is in the device, so what he was referring to was connected TVs, so over about 50% of viewing is through connected TVs. And I'd also say the US media market is very different from the UK market, and I think he was specifically referring to the US media market in that context.
You disagree that YouTube is TV?
So people are viewing YouTube through connected devices, so over 50%, but that's not the same as being TV in the sense of being a broadcaster, which we are not.
We do see increasing consumption of premium long-form content on the platform, on the television. So that is a bigger part of what we do. So it's around 50% of our watch time is on the TV. And we are really excited to see the engagement of some of our partners like the BBC, ITV and Channel 4 in terms of finding that as a useful distribution platform for their content. But it is also true that there's a very large proportion of YouTube which is what we would call kind of digital content created natives who've come up through YouTube, whether that's things like Cosmic Yoga, Joe Wicks, to hark back to some of the benefits that we all saw in COVID, as well as perhaps production companies coming directly. So it is broader and certainly not just TV.
Well, that's interesting. So just kind of out of curiosity, why would you avoid categorising yourselves as TV?
So I don't think it's about avoiding being categorised as TV. I think it's about looking at the functionality of the platform and the benefits of the platform that we provide in the distribution platform, and thinking about how that operates in a different way to, say, social media or traditional streaming services, because we are kind of in our own lane. There's another service like us. You know, I've watched YouTube this weekend to fix my dishwasher, to watch a previous parliamentary inquiry, and to watch a music video. That's a whole diversity of content that you don't necessarily get in other scenarios and settings.
Well, why don't we just reclassify what a broadcaster, I mean, because it's becoming so, I'm sorry, forgive me for interrupting, Natasha, but I mean, it's becoming so opaque now, the difference between, so, you know, we most of us grew up in a world where you turned on the television and you were fed a curated set of content, and then we sort of went through the era of streamers where it was more of a, like you described, as a pull factor and less, you know, and less what you were being fed, and then what you're talking about is sort of almost the next iteration of that. So a lot of user-generated content, but there is also, you know, high-quality PSB-generated content that people can pull off as well. Why shouldn't we just reclassify what a broadcaster is in the modern world to reflect what the modern world generates?
So I don't know whether a broadcaster is the right terminology, but there's definitely a question for the committee to consider about terminologies and definitions when we look at different digital services and how they fit into the modern media ecosystem.
Yeah. So if you had to be classified as one, if you had to choose whether you're a broadcaster or a social media company, which one would you prefer to be?
Well, we are neither. But if
you had to, I mean, you know,
so we don't have social functionality in the way that social media companies do, and we don't commission programming in the way that a broadcaster does. So I do think we need our own definition, and I think, you know, often in some of the policy conversations that I have, we do get stuck in between.
Some of the streamers don't commission stuff. They literally just buy stuff that's already been made. And
they do program it though in a way that we don't, and they don't do it at the same scale that we do.
Yeah, so, but I mean that's just semantics, isn't it?
No, I think it's substantive.
I mean, why can't we just reclassify what broadcasting is?
I think there's a conversation about reclassifying and using new terminology for the 21st century media ecosystem, definitely. Yeah. But I don't think we are a broadcaster. I don't think some of the regulations, requirements for broadcasters... What
would you be then if we were reclassifying terminology for the modern world? What would you be?
A 21st century distribution platform.
But why are we very keen to hold on to the word distribute? Why is that the key word?
I think it provides clarity for people about what we do and don't do.
Does it though? Because as a user of YouTube, you don't feel like a distribution channel. You feel like, as you know, people that are interacting with you on the big screen, it feels just like a space that's filled in traditional media. So why would the organisation really want to hold on to the word distribution?
So I think people are interacting with us, you know, on TVs. They're also doing it on mobile, on their laptops, on their tablets,
doing that with the
across
PSBs
the
as well.
board.
It's the same.
So I think it's an important point of clarification. We are a distribution platform that has 500 hours of content uploaded every minute that democratises access to that content, but it's not the same as being a broadcaster.
If you were a broadcaster or you were a social media company, do you think that that would come with a bigger level of accountability? Is that one of the reasons? Is the accountability one of the reasons?
No, I think we are categorised as a user-to-user service under the Online Safety Act, so we have to meet obligations under that Act. Some of those obligations are applicable to us and make sense. Some of them actually are designed for social services with different functionalities, and actually it becomes difficult that we're bucketed in that context. I think the same would be the case if we were kind of grouped together with a broadcaster.
It's almost as if you need your own. We almost need to create a definition just for you and the people who aspire to be you, that sort of encapsulates what you do in the modern world.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, Vicky.
Yeah, just following on from Caroline's question in terms of if you had to say which one you were the most similar to, would you say that you're most similar to TV or social media?
So I think that's a binary that we just can't answer.
I'm just asking which one's the most similar to.
So I think it depends on different people's experience of YouTube. So I speak to some people and they say, I was watching YouTube at home on my TV, and they're like, what? You watch YouTube at home on the TV? And other people were like, I was watching YouTube Shorts, and they were like, what's YouTube Shorts? So it really depends on the person and the product.
I guess just saying the most similar to. I'm not saying you're definitely that, just which would you say you're the most similar to? Are you the most similar to TikTok, or are you more similar to TV?
So I think I think it depends on the user and how the user is using the service. I'm not trying to avoid answering the question. It just depends on how the user is using the service.
Is there maybe something about sort of breaking down the different stages? So, I think Garth can talk a little bit about the responsibility that we do take in terms of how we manage our platform, and the responsibilities we take really seriously around providing safe, responsible experiences. So I wonder if it's perhaps sort of thinking about the different stages of how people interact with our platform and making sure that...
Kind of delving in on that though, in terms of, I think that TikTok at times can be quite irresponsible in terms of stuff, so social media, and I think TV can be quite responsible in terms of what goes on the platform. So back to the question, which one would you say you're more similar to, even if you're saying, 51 versus 49%?
The only way I can answer that is to say it depends on how a user is using the service. We have a number of different features and products. We have YouTube Shorts.
What would you say the majority of users would be using it, and therefore define
a combination, and it depends on each family, it depends on each individual.
50-50?
I don't think it's possible to answer that.
So in that case, you'd have to be regulated as both a broadcaster and a social media company. Is that what you're saying?
That's one of our concerns, is that we get squeezed by regulation on both sides. That we get inappropriate broadcast regulation, inappropriate social media regulation, and actually that isn't applicable to how our platform operates.
Yeah.
What would be inappropriate? When you say inappropriate regulation from one end, what do you mean by inappropriate?
So there are a lot of provisions in the Online Safety Act that relate to social sharing, for example, that just are not applicable to YouTube. They were designed with other platforms in mind, yet Ofcom has obligations to implement them, and so we have to work with Ofcom on proportionality of the implementation, because the features and functionalities of our service just don't operate in that way, for example.
What's appropriate regulation of your platform then?
So it's about thinking about the features, functionalities, risks, and societal considerations that Parliament will consider here, and regulating on the basis of those. So thinking about what does regulation for a distribution platform, the world's largest video library, look like, and how do we mitigate harms, and how do we make the most of the opportunities and the benefits of that.
And taking a step back, I like the way
You're going to answer the question.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just wanted to go to where you were going with the issue of responsibility. And maybe you can use that as you kind of think through and go through these concepts and these answers. Mairi alluded to this. We take the issue of responsibility very seriously, and particularly going back to the focus of this committee and some of the things that you've been talking about, some things you've heard about, this issue of quality kids' information and the kinds of things that kids are interacting with. And our strategy and approach is really around this issue of age-appropriate content. So we have YouTube Kids as the app for kids. Then we have, which is with that curated experience, and then we have age-appropriate experiences for tweens, and then for teens. And so as you kind of think through the broader issues that you're thinking about here as a committee, and then as you all are kind of going back in this debate, I think part of the concept that's important to us, and part of important to me as well, is this issue of high-quality kids content and age-appropriate content, especially when we think through kids and the developmental aspects.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. Thank you very much.
Final
please
question.
do.
Thank you. So then, who should be the regulator then? Who should regulate you?
So we are already regulated under the Online Safety Act by Ofcom.
But you're saying that's not appropriate, though, sorry.
No, there are some provisions within the wider bill where there is discretion for Ofcom to have proportionality. But when that bill was going through, we had to keep reminding people we don't have social functionality, we are different. There are a whole range of different online services. I'd also say two things. Technology is moving really, really quickly in this space, and also the media ecosystem and users' viewing habits are changing very, very quickly. And there's a very competitive dynamic market. So when we think about what regulation looks like, I think we need to think about what we're regulating for, what the outcome we're looking for is, and whether indeed there is a need for regulation.
Whether in actual fact we need a regulatory regime that's specifically for YouTube and platforms like you.
Yes, and I think that's for you to consider. But I guess I take a step back and say, what are we regulating for? What's the public policy objective that we be regulating for?
I mean, I think we'll establish that in the questions ahead. Thank you very much. I'm going to. I wanted to talk to you about a bit more closer to home about our British public service media, public service broadcasters. What's your relationship with those PSBs? Mairi, do you want to answer that?
Yes, happy to. So my team look after those relationships, and just so you know, I used to work at the BBC for a number of years, about 10 years, so I have a very strong love of the public service broadcasters in the UK as well. And so what we do is we provide strategic support to those broadcasters, along with other types of partners as well, production companies and creators as mentioned. And as I referred to earlier, most of the decisions really sit with the broadcasters. They are deciding how much content, what type of content, how to monetize, whether to monetize, etc. on the platform. And so what we do is we work with them to help them build their strategy and to share with them information and best practice about how to do that well on the platform. We meet with each of those partners regularly. We develop joint business plans with them. We share benchmarks, case studies, upcoming product features to help them drive their strategy.
The UK government's made it clear that it wants YouTube to work with PSBs so that high-quality UK children's TV content is prominent on YouTube. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it's even spoken about legislation to ensure that happens. So where's YouTube stand on that?
Yep. Let me take that in two parts. So I think the first thing I would say is we think that there is a lot of high quality content on the platform that doesn't come exclusively from broadcasters. I've already referenced some of the creators on YouTube who create fantastic, beloved content, but there's also the production companies. So referring back to the way that broadcasters work, they will commission content from a production company, and then after a period of time the rights will revert to the production company, and quite often at that point the production company may choose to use YouTube as a distribution platform and for international reach. So we have things like Bluezoo. I think you heard from Ollie Hyatt from Bluezoo already, who creates the incredible blocks, alpha blocks, number blocks, wonder blocks. The majority of the YouTube content that is associated with that comes to us direct from the production company. So the first thing I would say is, if the goal is to make sure that children really have access to high quality content, it doesn't all rest on the PSBs, because actually that comes from a variety of different sources.
What about the visibility of the PSBs, the prominence? I mean, how would you feel if the government did legislate to dictate that they should be more visible, more prominent than anything else? Or to substantially boost the prominence? So we have been working with the BBC to provide some levers for them to be able to do that. And in particular, we have something which essentially allows us that where we have
a theme for a period of time. For example, at the moment we're in British Science Week, that we elevate particular pieces of content that fit with that theme. And so we have offered the BBC opportunities to make sure that they have that. Unfortunately, we're not there yet because the supply isn't there yet. At the moment, I think as you heard from the BBC, obviously that's 6 weeks into their announced strategy, so they're in the foothills of their strategy, and that means that they don't currently have enough content to make use of all the opportunities that we're giving them.
It's not just about the BBC. I mean, I know that that's quite a new sort of formal relationship, but I mean, Channel 4 you've been in partnership with for a really long time, and they told us that they would strongly support the recommendation the government should consider legislating for prominence of PSB content on YouTube. Do you agree?
Sorry, I was focusing just on kids. So to broaden it out more generally to be on kids, Alex, do you want to?
Yeah, so I would just go back to the point that Mairi is making about supply. So we've offered this, content shelf within the kids' content experience for the BBC, and the BBC are currently not able to fill that shelf at the moment with content because they haven't pivoted their strategy. I think they said when they came to see you that they're in the foothills of their kind of pivot.
Once they've got enough content, you'd be happy to do some sort of prominence arrangement.
So I think we'd need to see whether prominence was even required. So if they have high quality content and they're putting it on the platform, particularly in the kids environment, we expect that content to rise to the top given our approach to quality and the systems that we have in place. There isn't actually any evidence that isn't taking place. I think we would say this is fundamentally, particularly in relation to kids content, a supply problem.
Alex, just talk me through that. How do you ensure that quality content floats to the top? Because we know that, there's no doubt that there is really high quality children's content on YouTube, but where's the evidence that where's the sort of kite marking, where's the traffic light system which shows that is rising to the top?
Do you want to talk to our quality?
Yeah, so we actually state this in our help center in a number of different places for creators. So as you've heard, we have these high quality principles that we've developed with outside experts, neurodevelopmental psychologists, media experts, health literacy experts. We've created these kids principles that are around things like learning, self-efficacy, and showing kids the world. And we've applied these principles to the platform. And as we've said, and what drives our systems, in addition to personalizations, are these high-quality principles for both kids and teens. So I think going back to building on Alex's point, that helps drive the kind of content that kids see on the platform.
We're very keen.
Sorry.
Yes, of course.
Can I just ask what you mean when you say you apply the principles to the platform? What's that mean?
Just to be explicit, that means that the recommendation system for kids and teens is driven by a set of principles that is backed up by an academic advisory committee who help us set those principles, and that drives the algorithm alongside humans being involved.
Yeah. And to be more explicit, the concept of drive means we elevate the visibility of that content so that kids are more likely to see that content.
To what extent does content from your own country come into that equation? So, I'm sure American parents are really keen that their kids see American content. For example, what percentage of the top 10 or the recommendations for UK users under the age of 13 are UK PSB content?
We think this is a really interesting kind of dynamic that's emerging, because UK content creators, particularly for kids, are punching above their weight on the platform. So UK kids content creators make up over 10% of the global made-for-kids content corpus. And on top of that, over 80% of UK content is seen outside of the UK from UK channels. And so there's a huge export market. We're really good at this. And I think we've also seen examples of UK content making up a good proportion of the content that's on the Made for Kids homepage, for example, or the YouTube Kids app, YouTube Kids.
What does a good proportion look like? What percentage of the top 10 for under 13s would be PSB content, for example?
I think it would be about PSB content is one of three buckets. So if we think about PSB content, if we think about UK kids production content, and then we think about high quality UK kids or YouTube native content. All three of those make up the UK content bucket.
Yeah.
And we think there's a good proportion of that on the platform that is being served to users.
What's a good
We think
proportion?
there's more work to do, particularly with the BBC. We don't have the exact numbers. It would fluctuate depending on what the...
Roughly, I mean, half, more than half? Less than half?
I would just go back to the BBC is still very nascent in their strategy, and you know
Yeah.
we think they have a great strategy. We're really looking forward to seeing it deliver, but they don't currently have
Do
sufficient
Channel
volume.
5 though, don't you, as well? You have Channel 5 content and they do a lot of children's content.
And for example, Peppa Pig is something that is very present on YouTube, but provided by the production company E1 rather than Channel 5. So to focus on the BBC as the main provider of public service kids content for the UK, it is still nascent, and that means that the volume of content is not currently there.
What's okay? So what about high quality British? So let's take the heat off the BBC now for a moment. What about just high quality British content? What percentage of the under 13s content seen in the UK is British?
Don't have the answer to that, I'm afraid. We can certainly follow up and look
Come
at
back
that.
to it.
Yeah.
I would come back to Alex's view that the role of our platform is to give everyone a voice and show everyone a world. So it will be that we have a more international offering than the PSBs may have, and I think the PSBs, they also have some of that too. They do also have some international content. Ours will be more so, but the quid pro quo is that we also provide that international platform and that opportunity.
Given that, I mean, you're in a very, you're in a fantastic position where you have a lot of young eyeballs on you, and I think a lot of people would want to see, you can, for obvious reasons, you'd want to see those young people getting fed content which is homegrown, that shows, the diversity and the talent across the UK, in the same way that we used to when we were growing up. It's really important to sort of drive that sense of sort of community and identity. So it would be really helpful to see A, what that number looks like, and B, how you're prioritising that. Thank you.
Happy to. Can I add one more answer just on that last point,
of course,
which is a partnership that we're running with the BBC with NFTS in order to help develop high quality content on the platform. So we're providing a training scheme across the length and the breadth of the UK, which will be in 6 different regional and nations locations to support 150 content creators who wish to make high quality content for the digital world.
Is that just children's content, or is that across the board?
There will be 50 for children's and learning, 50 for news, and then 50 more general.
Remind me, what did you say? How much did you say you're putting in to do that?
How much are we putting in? I didn't say that. We can follow up on that.
Okay,
and give you that number.
And that builds on the launch pad also that we had. So we've also worked with YouTube native content creators in the UK through Mairi's team to kind of help them grow and expand their businesses and enter the Made for Kids environment. So we are very much committed to fostering UK talent and getting them onto YouTube Kids and onto the Made for Kids experience.
Sorry, just replay that for me, so that you're working with content creators to
help them with their strategies for how to make high quality content on the platform. So they will have a 10-week, mainly virtual training course, but with in-person meetups across the country. And it will be opportunities for them to meet each other and to learn from each other, but also to hear from experts, to gain from the expertise of NFTS. I think YouTube and the BBC will both also bring speakers along, and it would range from things like how to do the best titling for a digital first environment, how to use analytics. It will run through, for example, what the high quality principles are, and how to make sure that you're creating content that meets those principles.
but categorically not commissioning something.
No.
But people will be going through this training program. I think someone mentioned earlier, why would you avoid kite marking content then that's gone through, say, at least this process where you're driving high quality, as a parent who sits there with a child on YouTube who can go from an unboxing video, which is honestly, quite frankly, horrendous, to high quality content. There is a very different set of circumstances. Screen time is not equal, right? There's good quality and there's bad quality. if you're investing in good quality with training, why on earth would you not want to badge that in some way and let people know that you are investing as a platform in high quality content?
I think that's what we are doing. So with the Made for Kids Launchpad, which preceded the Create Connect BBC partnership, that was us working with UK content creators that we saw had potential to grow and enter the Made for Kids environment, so meet that high quality threshold. So we have worked with them, and once they do that, they enter into the Made for Kids environment, and they enter into the YouTube Kids environment. But that because we have a high bar to enter into that environment in the first place.
I think that what I'm getting at is that as a parent, to make informed choices for your child, and we have to also remember some of your viewing doesn't just come from Made for Kids content, it comes from your main platform as well, because children are going onto that in a way that maybe you don't intend, but they are. So badging that content as appropriate for children makes it easier for parents. And if you've already got this framework in place, I'm just wondering why you wouldn't make that a feature of your platform.
Well, I think we already do essentially do that kind of badging by having a Made for Kids experience, which has a high bar. And I wonder if Garth wants to talk about that, because that operates both in the YouTube Kids app, but also in Made for Kids on the main app as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify something that you said, there is YouTube Kids, which is its own standalone app, and there's Made for Kids content, where when a creator is making content, they would either market or systems pick it up as being Made for Kids. Made for Kids content can be on main YouTube, and there's a sub-segment of that can also be on YouTube Kids app. In the YouTube, the Made for Kids content, when that content is shown, there's a lot of protections that go along with it. So there's no personalized ads, there's no autoplay. The kinds of ads that would show up in that, they wouldn't allow ads on, say, unhealthy foods, etc. on that. So there's a difference between the Made for Kids content on YouTube main and YouTube Kids. Does that make sense?
I guess what I'm getting at is, if I'm a creator and I've done the high bar and I've in this thing, there is something you can say as a creator, as a badge of honour, if you've got a kite mark from YouTube to say, actually, this content has the quality that we expect it to do. Just sort of expecting parents to kind of assume that this is all okay, when actually then you're not. There is always the danger of something not high quality sneaks into that feed and sneaks into that schedule. It kind of makes it difficult.
I think the Made for Kids, being accepted into the Made for Kids, is that bar. So I think we do have that threshold. There is an advanced vetting process for kids content that has to meet an extra set of standards. And that is the quality content being accepted into Made for Kids content. It's not that you tick Made for Kids and you're automatically accepted. There are both humans and machine classifiers looking for bad content that doesn't meet that high quality threshold.
How do I stop my kid watches something high quality and then suddenly there's an unboxing video that comes up next? So I guess it
depends on whether that is that on YouTube main, is that on your account, is it on YouTube Kids? There are different viewing environments that would depend on the answer to that.
I think you just said looking for bad content, so it sounded like things to knock out rather than a positive seal of approval. Can you talk us through how that process works and the extent of automation or active human involvement? Does everything that says Made for Kids have to have been watched in full by a YouTube employee who puts their name to a certification?
Again, remember the difference between YouTube Kids.
Can we just deal with a simple question first, and then we get into the detail? Does every piece of content that says Made for Kids have to have been watched in full by a YouTube employee who puts their name to that certification?
Not Made for Kids and YouTube Kids is different. Remember, we were saying there's two different things. So for YouTube Kids and a YouTube Kids app, there's a combination of machine.
My question was the follow-up to Alex's answer about how you certify. So the question was effectively about the Good Housekeeping seal, something that says Made for Kids. I believe you said we have these processes to search out bad content, which tends to suggest, and you may not have meant this and it may not be right, but it tends to suggest there is a sort of default that it is okay until it's been proved otherwise. So I'm asking you just very straightforwardly, what is the extent of automation or human reviewing in that process? And does everything that ends up saying YouTube Made for Kids, has that been watched in full by a human employee of the company who puts their name to a certification of it?
It will be a mixture of human and algorithmic review.
So it hasn't necessarily been
based
watched
on
by
quality
someone.
principles.
So it could say made for kids without somebody actually having watched it and said, yes, this piece of material, this program, this video is suitable for children.
If I could give you an example. So, for example, the BBC would be green listed as a partner for Made for Kids. We would have deemed that they are a responsible editorial partner.
Okay.
We would then not have a human within YouTube sit down and watch everything that the BBC puts up on their channel.
Okay. So if we take the set of things which are not made by, let's say, BBC, Channel 5, I don't know which other particular production houses we'd want to have on that list. I mean, what proportion is covered by the BBC and Channel 5, let's say, for a start, which we've talked about most of this session? Within the Made for Kids category.
I can share those answers with you offline.
Just give us a roughly.
Sorry, so I think that the point that we were making before is that there is a challenge with the supply of content from the BBC. So of how many they committed to 58? How many channels did the BBC go to?
The BBC will be launching 50 channels
and
on YouTube.
Hang on, just very roughly. You've got a ton of content on YouTube. You talked about how many hundreds, whatever of hours, or thousands of hours per minute comes on. Right. And those global content available on the platform, right? Yeah. So I'm guessing, I may be wrong, you can correct me, I'm guessing that the BBC content, I mean, is an interesting sideshow for this discussion, but it's not the bulk of what gets branded Made for Kids. So just to come back to my simple question, and okay, I'm happy if you set aside a relatively small number of brands which, the person in the street would say, yes, I absolutely accept that if somebody at the BBC or ITV or whatever has viewed a programme and said, that's a children's programme, that is a children's programme. You set them aside. Does everything else have to have been watched by a human being, an employee of your company, who says, yes, I confirm, I certify, this is suitable for children?
Well, I think it's a little bit more. And also just we're cabining in this conversation. Just
sounds like
just to talk about kids, right? Because we were talking about the whole of YouTube. We're just talking about now the Made for Kids and YouTube Kids experience.
I was asking you about whether it's on YouTube Kids or the normal platform. I was asking you, and I have asked you a couple of times now, about specifically things which are branded, they're marked Made for Kids.
Yes, so in that context, as Mairi said, we will look at what green listing partners. We will also look at previous partner behaviour. So if there is a partner that has consistently been uploading high quality content, we won't.
Okay, so here's the way to short circuit. What proportion of Made for Kids content is from what you've just described as green listed partners?
I don't have that number available.
Roughly.
Is it
virtually all of it, or is it a little bit of it?
I don't have that information available.
Come on. This is an inquiry about children's television. You're the largest provider in the world of that service. We're asking how much of the stuff that you brand as content made for kids is from brands, from companies, from producers who we, the person in the street, and you, through your green listing process, say that is by default, regardless of high quality content. You must know roughly the answer to that question.
We're looking at it in a different way. We're looking at the quality of the content, not necessarily always the institution that it comes from. So there is a mixture of...
Okay, so we're back to my original question before you started talking about how much is green listed. So my question is, how does somebody have to have watched that program? So if I see a thing which says Made for Kids on YouTube, do I know that somebody at the BBC or Channel 5 or wherever, or somebody at YouTube has watched it and said, yes, that is suitable for a 10-year-old or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so again, it's two separate, but there is not someone that watches every piece of Made for Kids.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to jump
in. That's kind of all I needed to know. So basically it's an automated system, presumably, which looks for bad content.
Or Made for Kids. Looks for good content.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks. In terms of interest, I think I've probably had hospitality from YouTube as well. And I'm also the chair of the All Party Group on the BBC, which is, I mentioned that because I just want to talk a little bit more about the BBC. So the strategic partnership that you've entered, what's YouTube's motivation for going into that?
The BBC creates wonderful content which delivers great value to audiences. So from YouTube's point of view, to have brilliant content on our platform is good for our users. And we're driven by our users. They have chosen not to monetize their public service content in the UK, which, as I mentioned, is totally their choice. So this is not something that drives revenue for us, but it drives user value.
Okay. High quality, great content. You presumably want that to be discovered and prominent. So just going back to the question around prominence, you said that the supply is not currently, there's not currently enough supply from the BBC to...
In relation to kids' content.
Yeah. So at what point do you expect that to be all uploaded and ready and watched enough so you can make a judgment as to whether it is getting the discoverability and prominence that you would like it to get? They would like it to get.
I think that's really the gift of the BBC, and that's a question to ask the BBC when they think their content strategy will be, when they are both producing volumes of content and content in the right formats that is YouTube native, and content that our users on YouTube expect to see and value. We do see that happens when content is created that is YouTube native, that's created at supply. It rises to the top, users find it across the world, not just in the UK, and there are positive outcomes from that.
The advice that we would typically give companies or individuals setting up channels is that having a consistent approach to content is really important. So that's both about kind of frequency of upload, but about the nature of the content as well. It does, I think, the steps that you'd go through would be you'd launch your commissions, which the BBC have done. The commissions get made, and there's probably a little bit of test and learn. You maybe put something on the platform, maybe it doesn't work straight away, and there's a little bit of adjusting because it's slightly different from traditional TV. You build up that audience engagement over time. So
you must have had those conversations with them, though, haven't you, about when it's all going to be ready?
I suppose because these things are a journey, aren't they? There's not like a very clear end point of now we're done and we can all go home. So what I can say from all my conversations with the BBC is we know that they are working hard on it and that there are lots of very exciting channels that we are anticipating launching soon.
Looking at the other public service broadcasters, I know the BBC are not monetising their content. The government has called for the relationship between YouTube and the public service broadcasters to be on what the phrase they use was fair commercial terms. Do you accept that there's somewhat unfairness in the commercial terms?
No, I don't think we do accept that there is unfairness in the commercial terms. I think we are in a process of trying to understand what the public service broadcasters mean in that context, and we are working through a process with them to try and better understand some of their concerns. But ultimately, we think that there is fundamentally a supply problem. That means that we can't actually assess the problem until we have the supply of YouTube native content on the platform in the first instance. So this conversation feels very premature in a context in which the BBC have said that they're at the foothills of providing content to BBC and are only just pivoting their strategy. So the idea that there's a discoverability problem or terms issue feels very, very premature.
It's not just the BBC. Though we've had evidence from all kinds of people that people who make high quality children's TV saying it's unviable to make that content based on the income from YouTube.
So I think this, looking back at the previous evidence sessions, both Ollie from Blue Zoo, Pact and Cobra all talked about the challenges of the funding models for kids' content, and I think we see those challenges across the board. They're exactly the same. The same reason that ITV has stopped commissioning is the same. There are regulatory challenges around monetization of that content and regulatory requirements, and we have, like others, prioritise meeting those regulatory obligations, which are the right thing to do. And so I think there's a broader conversation here about this isn't a YouTube-specific issue. This is a broader quality kids content issue and an ecosystem problem. And there's a real question about kind of like how do you fix that? And there are varieties of solutions. Different funds have been cited. Can this be built into the industrial strategy in some other way? There are lots of other areas that I think it's for the committee to look at and consider. Doesn't
YouTube have a responsibility? It's not just the government's responsibility or anybody else's. But you mentioned Ollie from Blue Zoo. I mean, they make number blocks, and they say that they couldn't do it if they were relying on the income that they got from YouTube. Now, given that the commissioning from public service and other broadcast and other production companies is declining, what can YouTube do? Because what does it say about your commercial terms if a product like number blocks would struggle to be economic on just from the income from YouTube?
I think it's worth saying, we heard from the BBC last week that it's also not possible relying on any one revenue stream, whether it's a public service broadcaster as well. And I think maybe the nature of the children's production sector is that they usually do have to put together a number of different forms of revenue to make it stack up. And traditionally that was maybe that you'd have a broadcaster commissioning you and you'd maybe look at the international rights. And I think the BBC quoted 23% last week. And I think YouTube is a contributory factor to growth. We gave a great international platform to some of the statistics that Alex quoted earlier, that it's 80% of watch time comes from abroad for our UK production companies on YouTube. So that's a massive increase in their reach and ability to monetize. It's a way to build fandom such that then, if you've got a theme park or a toy line or whatever else, then you can kind of build out on that. So whilst we're not the answer to absolutely everything, I think there are several really positive things that YouTube provides those partners.
Quickly on what Jeff said, I think the question really is, you're right, the ecosystem is the thing that needs to be fixed in general, and there are opportunities for content creators to build a brand and to take that globally, and your platform allows them to do that. But what is your role in supporting the starting of that? Because I think the challenge and the problem is it costs far more to create this content, the good quality content, than they make back in revenue from your platform. So what is your role in helping creators start there?
So there was a really interesting panel at MIPCOM a couple of weeks ago, which is a TV industry event, where the panellists talked about the different funding models. And actually the discussion was to say that on YouTube the costs don't need to be nearly as high. Whereas in the traditional world, you'd fund an entire series. You've got to start with 8 episodes. They've got to have a very a set that costs a lot and things like that. On YouTube, you can test and learn a little bit more. You can make one pilot. You don't necessarily need a high amount of upfront investment. See how it goes, iterate and build from there. So it actually changes the cost structure as well as providing some of the revenue streams as well. So I think that's the first thing I would say. And the difference is also that we don't provide upfront funding, we don't commission the content, but equally then the rights, the control, all of those things that I mentioned, that sits with the content owner. And actually it was interesting on the panel because one of the panellists had a more traditional model where he was looking for investment from multiple different production companies. One of the other panellists said to him, you're just a producer on your own show. You're not actually getting to have any of the kind of editorial control and the judgment and things like that. And the second panellist said, what I do is I control it all myself. And yes, I have to find a budget up front, but it's a smaller budget because I'm doing it in this way. I'm sort of solving for YouTube first. And I think that benefits in terms of the risk and the reward is better. So it's a slightly different model, but for some people it's clearly a model that works.
Is that not just dumbing down the production volumes?
I don't think that's the same thing. I don't think that there is a direct translation between the cost of making something and the production values involved.
Can I just come in there? So look, we've heard from the BBC with regards to, and I understand what Alex said about the sort of discoverability sort of aspects, but what kind of specific IP protections and sort of prominence and guarantees can you provide in this partnership with the BBC? They're handing over a lot of content. So what is that? What does it look like?
Specifically within kids?
In terms of your relationship, let's go with kids for now.
Yeah. So what we have discussed with the BBC is what we call special content deals. And that gives them the ability to be featured in each of the different age category versions of our kids' experience at a certain frequency. We started doing that in February, and as I mentioned, we don't yet have the supply for them to fully take advantage of that. So that's what we will be working with them.
I understand about the supply, but what about the actual specific protections, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 1,000 pieces of content? What are the protections? What are the guarantees?
So there are no guarantees on either side. So the BBC is not mandated to put any volume of content on YouTube. And so this is a voluntary partnership on both sides.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to Rupa.
Hi everyone. Yeah, the 29 figures that came out showed a quite substantial drop in ad revenue for under 13 content, which you yourselves recognised at the time would have significant business impact. And there was this $100 million fund set up in the US, in dollars obviously, to support thoughtful original children's content. And we know, I mean, you've acknowledged it yourselves, that there's a sort of shrivelling sector of children's programmes. We've seen it, we've been to the BBC, to ITV recently. Given this precedent, why couldn't you do the equivalent thing for the UK?
I'm not actually aware of this fund.
Me neither, I'm afraid.
This is we stopped commissioning original content because it wasn't core to our business strategy a number of years ago, but that predates.
You've put it in your own evidence to us. We are going to continue, okay, maybe it's not come on stream, but it's happening. We're going to continue investing in the future of quality kids, family and educational content. We're establishing $1 million fund dispersed over 3 years.
So that will be talking about how we are supporting content creators grow. So when we talk about the Made for Kids Launchpad and the Create Connect work, that's about us fostering the ecosystem, not about us commissioning content and making editorial judgments.
True. So that's for the US market. Can we have an equivalent for the UK? So, for example, in 2016, the legislation that stopped unhealthy foods being advertised on commercial channels, at the time kids' eyeballs are watching. That means that the things that we grew up with, How, which Dame Caroline's father presented for many years, that is not happening anymore because ITV is not getting chocolate bar adverts that we all grew up watching. Yeah. But in America, it's not you making the programmes, it's the ecosystem, as you say. Why can we not have an equivalent?
So I think that's not, and I should say also, I grew up as a huge fan of your sisters as well. So, I really appreciate.
That's the interest, I should have said.
I really do, we value.
Who was a Blue Peter presenter for over a decade. Yep.
I think that fund refers to some of the work that Mairi has set out, both in terms of the Create Connect work and the Launchpad work. What we're trying to do is to foster high-quality YouTube native content creators who can grow their channels and reach global audiences. And we have that in the UK. Cosmic Kids Yoga, Matt Green.
Would there be something to help the traditional broadcasters? Because what we've been led to believe, and the Children's Media Foundation have put it in their evidence, they said it's not just in America. You've done something similar in Australia. Skip ahead, Australia. Does that mean anything to you?
I think there's a...
Go back, just picking up on what Rupa said, can you just correct it? So if this record is wrong, we had evidence from the Children's Media Foundation, going back to Rupa's first question, which said in 2019, following a Federal Trade Commission settlement, YouTube created a fund in response to the huge drop in revenue children's content makers experienced. And it was aimed at under 13s. It said, we're going to continue investing in the future of quality kids, family and educational content. We're establishing a $100 million fund dispersed over 3 years dedicated to the creation of thoughtful original children's content on YouTube and YouTube Kids globally. Are you saying that didn't happen?
So I will need to, neither Mairi and I have full awareness of that.
Sorry, that was before I worked here, so it's not something I'm aware of, but we can certainly go back and check it.
Let us write to the committee to clarify.
Maybe our friend from across the pond knows about that.
No, I'm not aware of that, so I think we should just come back to you and clarify.
What about Skip Ahead Australia, an initiative between Screen Australia and YouTube that includes funding for production? So that's another example from the other side of the planet.
But I guess I would point to the Create Connect work that we're doing and the investment that we're putting into learning and education launchpads as being very similar to the funds that you're describing. We are investing funds in the UK to help high-quality UK content producers, and also the mixture between the traditional screen sector and, the kind of next-gen YouTube-first ecosystem grow and thrive in the UK. We are committed to doing that. Mairi has people in her team working on that. We've launched a partnership with the BBC. It's very much part of the ethos. We see ourselves as part of the UK screen sector and supporting the UK screen sector through the development of talent.
And perhaps just to
But
add
that's
to
not
that,
the same as commissioning.
perhaps where YouTube can kind of uniquely add value is at that kind of grassroots, democratizing, allowing people to kind of get started. There is no barrier to entry on YouTube. You can be in any part of the country, and you can be at the beginning of your career, and it's a place that's where we can kind of, I think, uniquely help in this ecosystem, and so that's where we have focused most of our training and expertise.
And I guess the people watching will think that, every time you go on YouTube, the algorithm, and there is an accusation of sort of monetizing hate, that if you look at these nasty things, it shows you more, and sensationalism, clickbait, all that. So the most latest figures, February 2026, are that YouTube generated more than 60 billion in revenue, and that is through advertising. That's way more than Netflix, which was 45.18 billion, which, people see that as a comparator. So just the question is, what would stop you? It would be a goodwill gesture, maybe, to make a fraction of that 60 billion available to fund high-quality educational children's programs when the market has shriveled and shrunk because of the advertising revenues and all that.
I guess what you're referring to is the traditional kids production ecosystem, and there are, as Mairi has set out and as I've set out, there are three different components to kids content. There is public service broadcasters, there's production companies that sit within that traditional ecosystem and kind of merge into the new media ecosystem, and then there's YouTube native content creators. And we are investing in both of those, or in partnering with all of those groups. But we also need to recognise that there's a transition in viewing habits. There's a transition in what users want to see.
But there's also been the Young Audience Content Fund. So that was a thing, I think for COVID reasons and stuff, that was discontinued. It never really reached its full potential. I've got constituents who work in the industry saying, can't we have something like that? If, government finances are straightened, yourselves with a 60 billion profit, a fraction of that could go to something like a Young Audience Content Fund. I'm not arguing about whether you're a platform or a creator or a what. Can you see what I'm saying?
So I can to a degree, but we also have a commitment to our YouTube native content creators to make sure that they are able to thrive.
It's not either or, it's not a binary mutually exclusive, I don't think.
I think it becomes challenging for two reasons. It's like YouTube is the world's largest video library, and you don't ask a library to start paying for the commission of books. It's slightly it's slightly outside of what we do as a distribution.
Because for monetizing hate, it would be a goodwill gesture, and it would put you in everyone's good books.
I would hope that we're not known for monetizing hate. I would say that we have really strict and strong hate speech policies and very strong.
I've been on another committee where we've.
But to come back to the point, I think there's a broader public policy point here. There's clearly an issue, and there are a number of different scenarios. But I would just note, as Google is YouTube, there are a number of levies, hypothecated taxes, children's media literacy, children's commissioning, supporting SMEs in high streets, digital skills. It's ultimately for government and parliament to decide what that looks like, but it is an additional tax and a levy that's being proposed in this scenario.
YouTube native content creators?
It's an open platform, so they. Do you mean how does their content get on the platform?
You invest in the YouTube native content creators.
So the ones who come on the training program.
So how do you choose who gets that investment?
So NFTS is running the training program. So they are opening applications actually, I believe, on Thursday, and so they will review the applicants. And I think they will be looking at. They have published some criteria of who would be the kinds of eligible people that they're looking for. But I imagine they'll also be looking at how they make sure they get good representation across the UK.
So you commission the YouTube native content creators?
We're not commissioning them. We are providing them with a free training skills program. There are absolutely no commitments for them to put any content on YouTube or anything like that.
You choose and select who they are.
The NFTs do.
Can I just clarify on that kind of back to that sort of thing of supporting the children's content ecosystem? And I appreciate you. Of course, you're going to want to, because you're focused on democratizing access to markets. Really, essentially, is what you're trying to say. So you want to ensure that native creators have the same access to audiences as public service broadcasters, essentially. But
subject to quality. So just as a reminder that the quality
subject to quality. But ultimately, I'm sure if we spoke to a lot of your native creators, the thing they like is consistency and an income revenue that isn't all over the place. So I'm just wondering, and you mentioned this earlier, around the hypothecated taxes and all the other things that are on your kind of tied to the digital landscape. Are we saying we need to, instead, because you're avoiding commissioning content, you don't want to be in that space for whatever reasons? Do we need to go into a space where we start recommending, well, we put a levy on your platform to fund children's content so that your natives can have an income that isn't all over the place, so that the production companies can still survive, and that we create an ecosystem that is stable again, so that we can have good quality content on whatever platform young people choose to watch it?
I just made two points. I think that the first is that the committee hasn't heard from any YouTube native content creators. So I think you have Maddie is an absolutely amazing BAFTA-winning kids creator, but there are a whole range of other creators that are YouTube only in some cases, and I don't think the committee has heard from the wide. Given there are 15,000
children's content, it's very difficult, as you said yourself. As Mairi said, it's very difficult to be YouTube only because you have to build a kind of jigsaw of income because you don't make enough money from kids' content.
And
not necessarily also TV though. It could be that you are a YouTube creator and then have a line of physical merchandise or something.
I think the point is that it's not a stable income and you do need to diversify. So to put the floor back into the market, do we not need to look at how we do that?
So the second point I would make is that I was at the same children's kids conference with Mairi, and no one said a bad word about YouTube and there was none of the kind of some of the focus and criticism that we've seen in some of the evidence was not reflected in that room, and there were 4 hours of panels and 4 hours of discussions, and so I don't know whether the committee is getting a full rounded picture of the full commissioning model, and also
just to be very clear, this is not an attack on YouTube, and this is not in any way saying that YouTube is a bad thing. It's not that is not at all. But the reality is, you have all stated, as we all know, viewing habits have changed.
Yes.
The way people consume content has changed. So that means the funding models and the funding streams has to change too.
Yes.
And so if we need to move along, if you're not going to be able to generate the revenue you need from advertising revenue for young people's content on YouTube, we're going to need to think about how we do this properly. Because just relying on perhaps you might get some sort of merchandise deal means we're not democratizing this. Essentially, we're going to create very big winners and very big losers, and we're losing a lot of skill and talent in the middle, aren't we?
Well, I think the other thing I would say is we're looking at this also from a very domestically focused lens. If you look at a YouTube content creator who is then able to grow their audience globally, particularly in the US, create fandom, you do have a sustainable business model, and we've heard from creators who are doing that successfully. It's a different model, and it's a transition, but it's not one that isn't available to people.
We're talking about children. I mean, the thing is here, we're talking about children, and you've already said yourself, Alex, that it is the within the constraints that you have to operate because of all the protections around advertising around children and that sort of thing. It is much harder to make money. So you spoke about, it might have been Mairi that spoke about Ollie Hyatt from Blue Zoo, company, they make number blocks, that's hugely successful. They told us that, Ollie told us that he would have struggled to make the content if he had to rely on the advertising revenue from YouTube because it's, because it's very, very much geared towards very young children. So what does it say about the ability for creators to be able to make a sustainable income? I mean, to Natasha's point, given the constraints that you have to operate in, if people who produce content like that, which is very well known, are not able to make a living out of it?
I think I would take a step back and look at the wider frame here and the wider challenges. This is not a YouTube-specific problem. This is one that we've seen.
I'm not saying it is, but we're not. This is not a YouTube-specific inquiry. It's a children's television inquiry. So we want to know from your, this is not. We're not attacking you. We want to open your brain and take out your thoughts on how do we fund sustainable quality, British children's television and video content for the foreseeable future.
I think I don't think I have a clear answer to that, and I agree it is a hard challenge, and I think we're in agreement that the UK creates fantastic content, and so we would love for that to be something that is sustainable. The way that we try and think about it at YouTube is we think almost about a flywheel of how do we make sure that for creators and partners they make wonderful content, which in turn really pleases users, which in turn drives monetization, and that's all wrapped around a framework of responsibility as well. But you need all of those pieces for it to work, right? So if you're not getting the wonderful content, then the users aren't happy and there isn't any monetization. And the problem with children's is it is challenging. There are stricter considerations around advertising, which we take very seriously. We don't do targeting ads for children. That reduces the monetization portion, and so it is more difficult. And I guess whatever we think about, we want to make sure that we create those incentives.
If you can't commission, then it sounds like Natasha's idea of a levy would be the solution to everybody's problem.
Yeah, I mean, we moved out of original commissioning as YouTube because it was not our core competency. I think one thing that we have done, which we hope is a contributor to some of these creators, is something which is called Player for Education. And basically what that solves for is it means that teachers in the classroom can use an ad-free version of YouTube, but there is a payment mechanism, so the educational tech platforms pay YouTube for access to the content to provide to teachers, and that money is used to pay back to the creators of the original content. So what we were trying to solve there was if you are creating learning content, but then you can't have ads around that in the classroom, what's the incentive for those learning creators?
There's some details on that. That's quite complicated, but it would be helpful if you could just maybe update us with some details on that. We need to move on. We've got 20 minutes before you guys have to flee, and I'm sure you will be very pleased at that point. Bio, please.
Thank you, Chair. Do you sort of sympathise with parents who navigate sort of the usability of YouTube for their young people?
Yeah, not to sympathise. I am a parent, and I love my job at YouTube, but I love my kids even more. And so we not only sympathize, we work with parents in general. And so if I think what you're referring to are parental controls in general, and you may have seen we work to simplify a lot of those controls, and we announced that recently. In terms of being able to allow parents to be able to toggle between accounts to set up that age-appropriate experience. So to answer your question, we do. And one of the things we've heard from parents is, and this was published in a study, is that over 80% of parents within the UK, when their kids are in the supervised experience, that they believe they are getting an age-appropriate experience, which again is our goal, is to have kids have an age-appropriate experience. And so not only sympathize, I think we work to do that. One of the tools that we most recently did is we allow parents to now set their short timer on their kid, the amount of time their kids view short form video. They can set it to a lesser amount, they can even set it to 0. That's an important change in what we listen to parents.
Thank you for that. When the committee took some evidence, we spoke to Professor Orban, and they basically said that parents effectively, for parents to sort of have a sort of high control, and I quote really, to sort of have a highly educated a parent needs to be highly educated in order to sort of like navigate the tools on your platform. And then there was another report in 2024, and it found 16% of parents did not know how to set up parental controls. And so I get what you've just conveyed is a parent that is technologically enabled, but we know that's not the case of everybody. This report says 16. Obviously, it's possibly sort of more in some scenarios. So what's your view on that?
So there are a couple of things. For that's why we have a lot of baseline controls, baseline protections for kids. For any kid under 18, if the system picks up that you're under 18 via age inference, there are a number of things like targeted ads, autoplay, and well-being features that surface. So that's at a baseline for children.
No autoplay on YouTube Kids?
No autoplay, not only in YouTube Kids, but if you are picked up as the age, if the system infers your age as being under 18, these protections kick in, including no autoplay. This is on YouTube main if it thinks you're a kid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm sorry. I want to get back to your question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't interrupt you.
No, carry on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that's one aspect. So by default, a lot of those things are occurring in the background. But as I just mentioned, we work to simplify our parental controls to make it simpler for parents in general. So I would venture to say part of what we're continuing to do is to listen to parents and make those changes. And so to answer your question more succinctly, a lot of that simplification we just announced in January of this year, and I think we're going to continue with parents. Third thing, sorry, I don't want to, please go ahead.
You said January. I mean, obviously, has that taken too long to come about?
You've
been in operation some time.
Yeah.
We've heard about the profits that you make. We understand you're a well-resourced organisation. So why is it taking that long to sort of make those adjustments?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think it's ongoing evolution. I mean, I think we've been making changes to parental controls. We introduced a supervised kids experience for younger teens and then for teenagers. So I think this is continued evolution. So what I would say is that it's continuing evolution, especially as we continue to hear from parents.
And if I could just come in, I think this is about uptake of those tools. So we've done research, and over 80% of parents who use the tools think they are good, and over 80% of parents think that it helps their kids achieve a better, more age-appropriate experience. So, I think this is a whole of society problem. It's also part of the government's consultation here. It's like, how do we encourage more people to use parental tools, and how do we make it as easy as possible for parents that are juggling lots of things?
I do understand that, but Alex, you mentioned sort of 500 hours are uploaded, of content uploaded sort of hourly, and Marie, you mentioned that you spoke about how kids access the channels, so there's different platforms, phone, laptop, even on TV and things like that, and so you've got all these different routes into the platform. You've also got sort of YouTube Kids, for example, that doesn't have an autoplay, but you may have children's content on the main YouTube, which has autoplay. So my concern is that, yes, of course, there are some parents who are enabled. The big issue is there's a lot of parents who don't have the skills or the time to protect their kids. So your platform does have an impact, and the penetration of your platform is significant. So that's
all right, I just want to clarify something you said. For made-for-kids content on YouTube main, autoplay is disabled. So not just in the YouTube Kids.
It's off by default, it's not disabled.
I'm sorry, off by default. I apologize. You're right, sorry. Not disabled. I apologize. That's not the right word. Off by default, thank you. I used the wrong terminology. It is off by default. So to your point to your point about YouTube Kids app and YouTube main, it is off by default in the YouTube made for kids content. It is off by default in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what about children's content on the main channel?
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
So if you're on YouTube main, and you're watching a lot of number blocks, Bing, whatever else, anything else that sort of signals that actually you may not be an adult, you might be a child, then the system will pick that up and it will say, right, this is probably a child watching, let's start treating them as if they were a child, even though they're on YouTube main.
And I really don't want to lose the fact that there are a number of default protections from our community guidelines that remove, like 98% of content before, algorithmically at scale, and do that really well, to our innovative, age assurance model that places children in a protected state and age gates adult content. There are a number of baseline protections they're put in place, even on top of the parental tooling.
Okay, and just one another aspect is obviously comment section. So there's so many ways that sort of our young people are affected, and so what's the sort of protections around sort of some of the comments that you find in some of these channels as well?
And so the kinds of things that are turned off for younger kids are no private, no ads, no targeting ads. Also within that, comments, the kinds of interactions that may occur do not happen within that setting, and then also notifications as well. So those are the kinds of things that we turn off within that system.
I'm going to keep us moving, David.
Thank you very much. Just on this thing about the system inferring the age of the child, it is true, though, is it not, that there are literally hundreds of thousands of children in this country who have an apparent digital age higher than their actual age, and we know that from the Ofcom research and other research. So can I ask, if you take the younger group, say 9 to 12s, they could be watching YouTube Normal, or they could be watching YouTube Kids. I'm sure you have research. What proportion of the time that 9 to 12 spend on YouTube is on YouTube Kids?
We have classifiers that look to identify under 13s on the YouTube main app and remove them.
Okay. So you think there's nobody under 13 watching YouTube regular?
So there may be, but we have systems in place to try and catch them and remove them. We find these channels are frozen for 14 days. People are given an opportunity to then verify their age, and if they're not able to do that, then the channel is removed.
The channel or the user?
Sorry, the user's account is removed rather than the channel. Sorry, just to be clear.
So your clear policy is that there should be literally no child under the age of 13 using regular YouTube.
Using the YouTube main account.
They should be.
Thank you.
If they do, no, sorry, I just want to clarify something. If they do, they should be in either the YouTube supervised experience or in the YouTube Kids app. So the YouTube supervised experience between the ages of 9 to 12 allow that. So I just want to be clear.
And I'm sure you do read the data that you see from, for example, the Ofcom research, the BBC have some research that suggests really quite large numbers of children under that age watching YouTube.
I guess are they in the Made for Kids experience?
Does that perturb you in any way?
We're committed to making sure that kids are having age-appropriate experiences. So for under 13-year-olds, we want them to be using YouTube Kids or in the Made for Kids experience. For teens, there's a supervised experience.
I'm coming to that.
Which is important, but we are committed to age-appropriate experiences, and that also means finding kids that are on the main app and making sure that they're not on the main app.
So for 13 to 17, so I had to look this up. I have children this age, but I had to look this up. I gather it's a thing called Google Family Link. Is that right? Is that the main way that you have some control? So what proportion of 13 to 17-year-olds are their parents using Google Family Link set to, I think they have to set it to explore more, is that correct? And what proportion of that teenage group is having that control exerted by a family?
What meaning within that category? What proportion have it set to that category?
No, if you're 13 or over, I'm trying to establish whether there's a significant proportion of children for whom parents have set some. I'm going to ask you about your shorts. In fact, you might as well answer that at the same time. You talked already about the timer for shorts feed. For the shorts feed, I mean, how many people have actually done that?
Well, that's what's coming on.
I mean, first you'd need to know there's a distinction between shorts and everything else. Then you'd need to know that Google and YouTube are the same company. Then you'd need to be taking a break from setting TikTok and Instagram to worry about YouTube for one more. Then you'd need to work out how you do it. Then you've got a toggle for your, what's it called? Explore More. And you've got a different toggle for your shorts timer. I mean, I'm sure it is possible. But what do we know about how many people actually manage to get to that stage 11 in the process?
So I would just say we've just announced, a new family centre to make this easier, which is being rolled out alongside the shorts time, and so the product is evolving to meet the challenges that you have set out.
But do we know? I mean, just on this. I mean, sorry, I'm being slightly flippant, obviously, in the way I word it. But do we know what proportion of families are actually using some form of these controls, given that it is complicated and there are multiple systems, and you might have an Apple device and a Samsung device and a PC, and you might have 3 children of 3 different ages and all the rest of it. Who actually gets around to, who actually manages to do some of this stuff?
So we don't have the stats, but I'm happy to write to you and follow up on that.
No, but I think what you're making a point is that parents' lives are complicated. I think that's the point you're making, and that there are different steps that people have to go through in that. And listen, I'll just tell you, I live a parent in a complicated life. So not just your constituents, but I work within that, live within that scenario too. And I'll tell you, that's why when we're talking about the kinds of things we have on default and the kinds of things that kick in, that's why we put a lot of effort into the things that will work by default and the things that work in terms of inferred age. And that's why we're going to continue to try to work to make these experiences simpler for parents. So I just want to say that my dad has taught me never claim perfection, but continue to work hard. And so I think that's why we'll always continue to work hard to really get.
Okay, but just I don't want to be too pushy here, but I don't think I heard anybody come up with either a number or a rough sort of.
No,
is it a tiny proportion? Is it? I mean, we know it's not most, right?
Back to you.
Yeah, they're about 5 million.
Okay.
Sorry.
Speaking of writing to us, I'm not going to expect you to have an answer to this one right now. But there's an ad campaign. Garth, you may have seen it since you've been in the UK. There's an ad campaign, including in Westminster Underground Station of late, that says something like 83% of parents think that YouTube helps your PR team will be thrilled that someone's read this back. Think it helps their kids access educational material or something. I mean, it's not the most obvious line to pick out of a survey. So my question to you is, I think it's a survey done with Oxford Economics.
Yes.
I don't expect you to have all the data ready for us right now, but will you commit to sending us the full set of survey questions and answers, including the crosstabs?
Yes.
Thank you.
To the best of the ability that I have control of.
I understand. Thank you. Now, saying there's a lot of great content on YouTube, I think is unarguable. But it's a bit like saying there's a lot of great content on YouTube is unarguable. But it's a bit like saying there's a lot of balanced discussion on social media. It is true, but there's also an awful lot of other stuff. And the great content is not necessarily what you see. Now, we just had a little conversation about education. I'm not sure I quite followed the thing about the product for in class, but you're going to follow up on that. I want to talk about education at home, homework. And one of the big complaints that as MPs we get from parents is I can't avoid approving YouTube for my children because the school keeps sending homework, setting homework that involves looking at a video on YouTube. There is a simple way around that, which is to create a walled garden for education content. So a parent could approve the use of YouTube specifically for education content and not for anything else. Will you commit today to doing that?
I think that's what Mairi described in terms of the product that we offer.
Yeah, so
it didn't sound like it. It sounded like an in-school product to me.
So nowadays a lot of the schools work with ed tech providers. So I don't know if you have children yourself going through education, but things like Seesaw or Firefly and things like that. Yeah. What those do is they essentially provide now, where you used to just get letters home from the school, now they all often come through that system, and that's where you might log in for your parents' meetings.
Why aren't you giving a plug for Google Classroom, by the way?
Google Classroom is another one. I apologise. Thank you.
Come on.
You've done excellent work on behalf of our marketing team.
Okay, you're quite right. So Google Classroom and Show My Homework and Satchel One, I mean, these are some of the big volume players. But they don't direct you to a walled garden. They direct you to a video on open YouTube as a general rule.
So the product that I was referring to, Play for Education, would be a way that you can access it within that interface.
And it would be as well as teachers.
So the teachers would be able to select the specific videos that feature for the children in their class. So I want them to watch this video, so therefore I'm putting that one into the garden that's available for that set of children.
And that would be able to be accessed from home for homework.
I would have thought so. I imagine it slightly depends on the education.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to write to us because we are then going to be writing to our constituents and who will be very interested to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we squeeze an extra 5 minutes out of you so we can get to our last two questions? Vicky, can you do yours very quickly, please?
I'm quite happy to come in on the back of the social media stuff.
Let's go to Jo.
So the banning of social media for under 16s is a live topic here in the UK, with the government, as you know, launching a 3-month consultation to improve children's digital well-being. And the government is watching the Australian ban very, very closely. So moving on to that, the e-safety commissioner in Australia advised that YouTube should be included in the under 16s social media ban, partly based on research that found 37% of young people had encountered harmful content. Does that statistic concern you?
So obviously a statistic like that would concern us, but I think it's about looking at what the UK is doing, and we do have a different both regulatory environment and also product in the UK. There are a number of benefits to the national conversational consultation that the government is putting forward. You know, it's looking at ages 0 to 16, which is more comprehensive. It's looking at a wider range of services, including gaming and emerging technology, as well as just social media. And also, critically, it's looking at features and functionalities, which is a real positive. And, you know, we have with Ofcom a risk-based system which looks at risk. And a number of companies have had to provide a huge amount of evidence about the risk profile of their services. And I think that any future, you know, action in this space that the government has committed to taking forward should be focused on that risk and should be focused on features and functionalities linked to that risk.
Let me sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, I was going to just say, listen, this concept of if we're hearing about harm, if we're hearing about the kinds of things that are dangerous, we are always concerned and take that very seriously. We have our community guidelines, we have our removal policies based on those community guidelines, and our system detects about 98% of harmful content. We publish this in our transparency report. Views that are violative or content that's violative against, you know, the harmful, dangerous policies that are against sensitive policies, and things like spam. All of that's what we consider removal from our community guidelines. So it takes it very seriously. Which reminds me of one thing I want to mention. The committee, thinking about numbers and things that are important. The committee had heard earlier from some amazing researchers that you have here about the amount of kids who have between the ages of 0 to 3 who have inappropriate who get age-appropriate experiences on YouTube, and they heard that number was 19%, and that was a study that was done that was published in 2024, but was based on data from 2020, and the small set of 420 individuals, and just so you know. That was before we had our kids' quality principles. That was before we had a lot of the other things that we use now to improve that. So I just want to say that in that study, the study is dated, and before we have a lot of the kind of things that we use now to improve our platform.
But does it concern you that YouTube is being put within that category of other social media? So it goes back to your identity crisis in the first question, doesn't it?
I think this comes back to the point, if 50% of people are watching YouTube at home on connected devices, you know, are we, and we have very limited social sharing and functionalities, I think it needs to be based on the risk. You know, I hear concerns about ephemeral messages and location-based services. I think that someone needs to look at these holistically and think, and also the conversations have moved from safety to well-being, which is also a really good point, which is why you've introduced, you know, the ability to turn shorts to 0, and I guess, and also why I think this conversation is important. I would also note with the Australian account-based ban, if you were to lift that and bring it to the UK, it would strip teens in the UK who have accounts of well-being features that are currently available. So all of the take-a-break reminders, all of the bedtime reminders would be gone, but they would still have access to YouTube. So there's, you know, it's not a particularly effective way of dealing with the solution, and it's one that we would want to see modelled in this country.
You've just mentioned one aspect there, so what other arguments would you give to Parliament that YouTube should not be included in a similar social under 16 social media?
Well, I think it comes back to, is YouTube social media, and does it contain risky features and functionalities that are concerning or detrimental to children's well-being? And what would be the challenges of restricting access to younger users of using those services? So there's a conversation about short-form content. You know, lots of my family members, lots of people that I know use short-form content to learn. We have great short-form content creators who are helping people break down maths, for example. So if you took away their ability to use that short-form content, that might harm certain groups. I think the other thing for me is a socio-economic consideration. When we have these conversations, there's often an idea that kids will have immediate access to other options. But actually, YouTube is a place for learning. People learn the guitar, people learn how to code, people learn to experience the rest of the world. That will, if we were to ban people from those services, then that would have a disproportionate effect on people from from more deprived backgrounds. And that hasn't really been a feature of the debate.
Yeah, so do you think there should be a ban for under 16s for social media?
I think we are focused on protecting kids in the online world, not from the online world. And I think that, you know, in a scenario where we're going to be looking at giving votes to 16-year-olds, kind of totally cutting them off from online activity and access and some of the debate that happens there, and then asking them to vote just feels very incongruous to us. Though I do recognise the real concerns from parents and society about the digital environment and about that, I think it needs to be done in a risk-based way and an evidence-based way. And that's why I think having a national conversation and a consultation looking at all of these issues is definitely the right way to do this.
There's been some data published by the London School of Economics here and the American Academy of Pediatrics that talk this issue about allowing kids to develop, giving them the guardrails, and then allowing their prefrontal cortex, all these other aspects to develop over time. It's kind of like, you know, my kids, you know, I allow my 11-year-old to start riding his bicycle a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more in the neighborhood. And he understands roles and responsibilities for himself. And so this idea of allowing kids to develop in a digital world and getting all of the good things they can in the digital world, and understanding how we help them to navigate harms and challenges, I think particularly important.
So that's a no. Is that right?
We need to move on.
So I don't think we think that YouTube should be banned. No.
Okay, it's fine just to say no. Do you worry about the amount of screen time that young people are facing? I know when I go into schools, teachers are really, really worried about this. This is particularly for you.
Yeah. And this concept of screen time, there's a lot of really interesting data. And there's something that's recently been published by the American Psychiatric Association and others. And one of the things to understand is, and this goes back to, I think, what the committee is here to talk about generally, is quality screen time. There's a big difference between the amount of screen time you may spend learning and understanding versus screen time you may be spent on less brain-enhancing activities. And so, all time isn't equal. And so that's why I think a lot of the conversation you've heard from the experts that came in January, et cetera, we're talking about, parental co-viewing and the kinds of things that enhance it. So I would say that the idea of screen time is important, but also the concept of focusing on quality time is also important as well.
Can I just make one additional point? I think it's really clear to understand we have a differentiated experience for kids and teens. The recommendation system for kids and teens is different to that for adults. We are directing kids and teens towards quality content through the guidelines that Garth has described, and we are committed to high quality content and age-appropriate experiences.
Could you ever introduce a kind of traffic light system?
What would that look like, sorry?
Where content that you know came from really high quality sources, so our PSBs in the UK, or maybe some of your production partners that you know produce high quality children's content, would be already marked as green, and then something that you hadn't really seen but had effectively passed your algorithmic AI check might be. I mean, what's the?
Well, I think what we have in our environment is our recommendation systems prioritize high quality content, deprioritize low quality content. Some of the content that we just talked about. Again, things around having to see the world, learning, creativity, the sense of self-efficacy, those kinds of concepts for kids, and then for teens similarly. So I think we guide our systems towards that, and I think that's that's the strategy that we're employing.
The problem with YouTube is that once you start looking at a certain type of content, it feeds you more and more the same. And what I'm interested in from you, Dr. Graham, is whether there is any... So when we were children growing up, I'm very elderly, so when I was growing up, there was only 3 and then 4 channels, right? But when we'd come home from school, you would be kind of... you would watch a curated section of TV programs, some of which you loved, some of which you were less interested in, but it was really good developmentally for your brain because you'd be watching a buffet of nourishing content, and some of which you'd watch thinking, I'm not sure this is of interest to me, and suddenly it would spark something in your head that would go on to be a lifelong passion. My concern, and that's why I'm interested from your perspective, from a developmental perspective of children, is if they're doing is watching endless episodes of something. In my children's cases, they're very keen on watching other children playing video games. What does that do developmental to a brain?
Yeah, so, I remember that experience, by the way, of like, and you had to go back and forth between a couple of channels. And so what we really employ in our systems is this idea, again, of content that is allows the kids to get more creativity, information that gives them more of this role model and self-independence concept. And so that's what our systems drive. Now, to answer your specific question, what we do with this is our systems are really geared towards delivering, and even our roles are really geared towards making sure that we continue to deliver high-quality content. Within the first year, Dame Caroline, that the YouTube quality principles were published, there was an increase of 45% of views on high quality content across our platform. And so what does that show, going back to your example that you just gave, is that once we employ these principles, it actually increases the viewing concept. Now, what we need to continue to do, I think, thinking through experiences I had when I was younger, you and I both had when we were younger, versus the experiences now, that's where it goes back to some of the things that you heard from the other experts that came and spoke about how we as parents continue to kind of engage with our kids as in terms of their viewing habits as well. But I would say that for us, we still are very much committed to this issue of high quality content.
Thank you. 2 more quick questions, then we can let you go. Rupa first?
Yeah, I just wondered if you'd seen this big trial that opened yesterday in California. It's being touted as a landmark trial. Both YouTube and Meta are being taken to court by a plaintiff for draining the brains of children and building addiction machines. So it's just started off with the opening statements. But apparently they've found documentation from Mark Zuckerberg, that there are internal business goals that want to increase the screen time hours that Vicky was just alluding to. And I think that they've also accused YouTube of being a digital babysitter for parents. How do you think that's going to go? It's just started, but it's all over the BBC website.
On comment on a live
legislation.
legislative trial that's happening in California. I think the lawyers will be watching this. Let me.
I think it's as parents we do recognise digital babysitter is useful as well, but how you might.
Given exactly what Alex said, so I want to make sure that from a legal perspective, I don't step out of bounds. But I will just tell you, I can't speak for any other platform. We are super dedicated to this issue around high quality content. In YouTube Kids, in that YouTube Kids app, where your youngest folks are interacting, we have systems, we have people, we have 10 years of experience, we have controls, we have large teams, we have a lot of things that's dedicated for our kids to have that protected experience. So I would say, from a YouTube perspective, again, I can't speak for what's happening in the other platform world, very much dedicated to this issue of safety in kids and teens.
Very good. Natasha?
It leads me to my final question. So in your professional opinion, and given the amount of work that you put into keeping young people safe on your platform, do you think your competitors are doing enough on their platforms?
I will just give one example if it's possible. So we've had and run a very innovative age inference and age assurance, a robust age assurance process on YouTube for a number of years. When the child safety code from Ofcom came into force, a number of other large services moved towards our system, which gates content and then allows children access to content, rather than allowing children access to content and then gating it. And so I think there are a number of examples, from that to the shorts timer to the quality principles that drive the recommendation system, that do differentiate us from our competitors, and the level of investment that we're seeing.
Do you think they're doing enough?
I think that overall the ecosystem needs to do more, and I hope that the Ofcom regime will encourage other people to raise the bar, and to meet the expectations of citizens and parents in the UK. And I think there's an opportunity for that to happen.
I knew you were looking to answer. I was going to try to drink as much water to not step into the wrong thing. Or here's what I would say. I would just tell you that we are super dedicated to this issue. From both the parental, individual parents and professional. And what I hope is that the ecosystem follows a lot of the things that we've done, because what we really care about is kids everywhere getting better, right? So it's not just that I want a child who's on YouTube to get better. I want children everywhere, all our kids. And so that's why I love conversations like these, and it's probably maybe the perfect way to end this. Your concern and your passion, we share that. And we believe that super deeply as well. So what I hope that we all are pulling everything together for the safety of our kids, because I think that's ultimately what we care about.
Yeah, I was just going to make one broader point, which is, on top of that, we are also really committed to the UK and the UK creative industries, and being a responsible part of the UK creative industry sector and the screen sector. And some of that, I think the passion that you had from us earlier was because, I think day in, day out, I see the work that Mairi and her team do to collaborate with partners, whether they're media cos or whether they're content creators in the UK. And we really do see ourselves as part of that ecosystem, as supporting that ecosystem. So I just wanted to make that point as well.
What do you think, Mairi?
Agree. Keep it short.
It's a sensible answer. Thank you very much. Everyone else happy? Good. Thank you guys so much for your time today. We're really grateful for all your evidence, but we'd be also very grateful if you could follow up in writing with all the bits and bobs that we missed out there. Yeah. And thank you for coming all the way from the States.
I just want to end to just say thank you all as well. We're all striving towards the same goal, and working together I think is important. So thank you guys.
Order.